The teller's fingers closed around my wrist before I even finished sliding my social security check under the glass. Not hard, just enough to make me look up from my purse. He was a young man, maybe 26, with a name tag that read J.R. Red and a small gold cross at his throat that caught the overhead light. The lobby of First Carolina Trust smelled the way every bank in Greensboro smells in October. Cold air pumped too hard, the faint sourness of carpet shampoo, and somewhere behind the counter somebody's burnt coffee. "Ma'am," he said, almost without moving his lips, "are you Mrs. Voss?" "Hannah Lindgren's mother." I nodded because my mouth had gone dry. He flicked his eyes once toward the manager's office, then back at me, and his voice dropped lower still. "Your son-in-law's family. I shouldn't be saying this, but I see things. I've been watching the deposits coming out of your daughter's account. You need to talk to her, please." Then his hand was gone, and his face went smooth again, professional, and he was counting out my $418 in 20s and 5s like nothing had happened. "Anything else for you today, Mrs. Voss?" "No," I said. "Thank you, Jared. You take care, ma'am. I walked out of that bank the way you walk out of a doctor's office, when you can tell the test came back wrong, but nobody has told you yet." My car was parked across the lot, under one of those crepe myrtles that drop sticky little blossoms all over your windshield in September, and bare twigs by November. I got in, set my purse on the passenger seat, and just sat there. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the key in the ignition, and that was when I saw him. Russell Lindgren, my daughter's father-in-law, came out of the Belk department store across the parking lot, swinging 2 of those stiff cardboard shopping bags with the silver tissue paper sticking up out of them. He wasn't dressed like a man who had told my daughter 3 weeks earlier that he might lose his house. He was wearing pressed khakis and a navy cashmere quarter-zip, and the kind of soft loafers that cost what I paid for a month of groceries. He clicked his key fob, and a new white Lexus chirped at him from 2 rows over. I slid down in my seat behind the steering wheel, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Russell loaded his bags into the trunk, careful as a man arranging crystal. Then he leaned against the back bumper and took a phone call, and even through my closed window and 20 yards of asphalt, his voice carried. No, she's already wired it. Marilyn picked it up this morning." A pause. A laugh, a real easy country club laugh. "Believe me, Hannah's not going to ask questions. The kid feels guilty just for breathing. We'll be fine through Christmas at least." My stomach dropped into my shoes. I am 69 years old. I have spent 47 of those years counting other people's money in a small CPA office downtown, and I know the sound of a man talking about money he didn't earn. I sat in that hot car until Russell pulled away, and I cried for about 4 minutes in a way I hadn't cried since my husband Bruce passed in 1991. Then I dried my face on the corner of my cardigan, started the engine, and drove home. Hannah is my only child. Bruce died of pancreatic cancer when she was 4 years old. I went back to school nights at Guilford Tech, got my bookkeeping certificate, and worked at Mr. Pettigrew's accounting firm on Friendly Avenue from 1993 until I retired at 66. I kept Hannah in tap shoes and Girl Scout dues on that salary, and when she got into UNC Greensboro for nursing, I cashed in the savings bonds Bruce's mother had bought her at birth and a little CD I'd been hiding from myself, and we made it work. She graduated with honors. She bought a sweet little brick ranch in the Hamilton Lakes neighborhood in 2019. I was so proud my chest used to hurt looking at her. She met Trevor at a hospital fundraiser the year after she moved in. He worked in pharmaceutical sales for a regional company out of Charlotte, and he drove a Mercedes coupe, and he opened doors for me the first 3 times I met him. I wanted to like him. I really did. But there was something about the way he watched the room when he thought you weren't looking, the way his eyes would land on a wedding ring or a watch and stay there a beat too long. He had a way of asking questions about your finances that felt like normal conversation until you were already 2 answers in. They got married 11 months after they met, at a vineyard out near Yadkinville. Trevor's parents drove down from a suburb of Richmond, Virginia, in a brand new SUV, and his mother Marilyn cried through the whole ceremony and called me sister by the end of the reception. His father Russell shook my hand with both of his and said, "Adeline, we are so blessed to gain a daughter like Hannah." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. The first ask came 3 months after the honeymoon. Trevor's father had been laid off from his sales job. That's what Hannah told me on the phone, and her voice was already tight with the worry that would never really leave it again. They were behind on the mortgage. Could she float them a few thousand, just till he found something else? Trevor was beside himself. He felt so guilty. Hannah is a nurse practitioner at a cardiology practice. She makes good money, but not rich money. She wrote the check. She told me about it because she felt strange about it and wanted me to say it was the right thing. I said what mothers always say. Family helps family. Then it was Marilyn's thyroid medication that insurance wouldn't cover. Then the roof in Richmond. Then Russell needed his catalytic converter replaced after, supposedly, somebody sawed it off in a Walmart parking lot. Then Trevor's younger brother, a kid I had never met and would later realize Hannah had never met either, needed help with tuition at a community college. Every story arrived with tears or shame or both. Every story came with a number attached. Hannah wrote check after check. I started noticing the circles under her eyes, the way she stopped getting her hair done, the way when I'd offered to take her out for Sunday brunch at the K&W cafeteria, she'd say she was watching her budget. A nurse practitioner watching her budget so she could feed her in-laws. I'd asked her gently once or twice. She'd brushed it off. "Mom, Trevor's family went through some hard years. He just wants to do right by them. That's part of what made me love him." I let it go. I was always letting things go. I had spent so many years afraid of being the difficult mother-in-law, the one who couldn't let her daughter belong to someone else, that I let things go that should have set my hair on fire. The whole drive home from the bank that day, I kept hearing Russell's voice. "The kid feels guilty just for breathing." That was my daughter he was talking about. My Hannah. They had figured out the exact place to push, and they were pushing it like a doorbell. I pulled into my driveway, sat in the car a minute, and made myself 2 promises. 1, I would not say a word to Hannah until I had something more than a feeling. 2, I would never write another check, give another cash gift, or contribute $1 more in any direction those people could reach. I would instead become the most boring, watchful, note-taking old woman in the state of North Carolina. That night I bought a black marbled composition book at the CVS on Battleground Avenue for $2.49. On the first page I wrote the date October 14, and what I had seen: the Lexus, the Belk bags, the phone call, Marilyn picking up the wire transfer that morning. Every word I could remember. The next Saturday, I went back to First Carolina Trust and waited in Jared's line on purpose, even though there were 2 tellers open. When my turn came, I pushed a deposit slip across with one of my pension checks and a folded piece of paper that just said, "Thank you for telling me. I need to know everything you can tell me. Are you allowed to talk?" He read it without changing his expression. Then he counted out my receipt and slid it back to me with a post-it stuck on the back. Battleground Diner, 6:30 tonight. Back booth. He was already in the booth when I got there, out of his uniform now, in a flannel shirt and jeans, looking even younger than he had at the counter. He had a coffee in front of him, and another one waiting for me with 2 creamers next to it. He'd remembered how I took it from when I came through his line. I sat down and he started talking before I'd even slid all the way in. Mrs. Voss, I could lose my job for this. I want to be honest with you. My branch manager would fire me on the spot. But my own grandma got cleaned out by a son-in-law back when I was a kid. Took her whole retirement. She died in a one-bedroom in a senior apartment when she should have died in her own house. And I see your daughter's account, and the same people pulling on it, and I see your face when you come in. I had to. I told him my voice would not work right then. I just nodded. He went on. Your daughter, Mrs. Lindgren, she wires money to a Marilyn Lindgren in Henrico County, Virginia, on the second Tuesday of every month. Different amounts. Sometimes $1,200, sometimes $3,000, once almost $5,000. Sometimes there's a second wire later in the month for medical. Every wire she sends within about 48 hours, money comes back into her checking from a Trevor Lindgren account, always smaller, 200, 300. I set my coffee down. Why would Trevor send her money back? Jared looked at me for a long second. Mrs. Voss, I don't think he's sending it to her. I think he's sending it to himself. They're a joint account, but the Trevor side is the direct deposit side. The transfers come from his salary, not from her. He's taking a cut of what she sends his parents and routing it back to his own pocket. I had been an accountant for 47 years. I understood before he finished the sentence exactly what he was telling me. My son-in-law was paid by his parents out of my daughter's money for every successful sob story. How long? I asked him. Since I started looking, 3 years, probably as long as they've been married. I drove home that night with my hands at 10 and 2, doing 20 miles under the speed limit on Wendover, because I was afraid of what I would do behind the wheel of a car if I let myself feel what I was feeling. The next morning I called Estelle Brennan. Estelle and I went back to a baby shower in 1984. She'd been a branch manager at Wachovia for 30 years before she retired, and she still played bridge once a week with 2 women who worked in the property records office at the Guilford County Courthouse. I told her the whole story over a pot of decaf at her kitchen table on Westridge Road, and she listened without interrupting, the way only an old friend can listen. When I finished, she said, Adeline, the first thing you do is you find out if those people own a house at all. The second thing you do is you find out if they have a mortgage. I'll have Patty pull the records in Henrico County tomorrow morning. It's all online anyway. We can do it right now if you want. We did it right now. Estelle's laptop sat on a placemat that said Wolsed Oakhaste Grandma, and within 20 minutes we had the deed for Russell and Marilyn Lindgren's address in a subdivision outside Richmond. They had purchased the house in 2008 for $270,000. They had refinanced once in 2014, and in March of 2020, a year and a half before they started telling my daughter they were about to lose it, they had paid the mortgage off entirely. There was no lien on the property. There hadn't been for over 4 years. So every dollar she has sent them since the wedding, Estelle said quietly, for a mortgage they don't have. Every dollar, I said. I went home and wrote it all down in the composition book. I underlined paid off March 2020 twice. 3 days later, Hannah called me at 9:30 at night, which was the latest she had ever called. Her voice was already wet. Mom, I hate to do this. Trevor's mom. She has to have a cardiac cath tomorrow. They want a $600 deposit before they'll even put her on the table. Trevor's at his max on the credit card from last month with his dad's tooth. Do you have anything? I'll pay you back. I'm so sorry. I had been waiting for a call like this. I had rehearsed 3 versions of what I would say. Every version I'd practiced went out of my head the second I heard her crying. Sweetheart, I said, I'll be right over. Which hospital? VCU Medical Center in Richmond. Trevor's driving up tonight. I'll meet you at your house in 30 minutes, I said. You and I are driving up together. I am not letting you drive that highway at this hour by yourself. There was a long pause. I could practically hear her doing the math of how to talk me out of it. "Mom, you don't need. I'll be there in 30 minutes, baby. Pack a bag." When she opened the door, I almost lost my nerve. She looked terrible. She had on yoga pants and one of Trevor's old college sweatshirts, and her eyes were swollen. She let me hug her, and I felt how much weight she had lost since the summer. In the car, somewhere outside Reedsville on US 29, I asked her as gentle as I could, "Honey, have you ever actually spoken to one of Marilyn's doctors? Seen one of her bills? Any OB from her insurance?" She didn't answer for a long time. The dashboard lit her face green. "Trevor handles all of that," she said finally. "It would feel weird for me to ask. They're so private about money." "They're so private about money," I repeated, "and yet you've been paying it for 3 years." She put her face in her hands and started crying. We got to the hospital at 1 in the morning. Trevor was not in the waiting room. The receptionist, a sweet black woman with reading glasses on a chain, looked through her admissions list twice and then a third time. There was no Marilyn Lindgren on her cardiac floor. There was no Marilyn Lindgren admitted to the hospital at all, not that night, not in the previous week, not anywhere in the system. Hannah called Trevor. He didn't pick up. She called Marilyn. Marilyn answered on the second ring, sounding wide awake. "Sweetheart, oh honey, didn't Trevor reach you?" "It was a false alarm. They sent me home around midnight. I'm so sorry to put you through all that worry. The deposit, you can keep it, sugar, in case I need it next week. They said this could happen again any day." Hannah didn't say anything for a long moment. I watched her face change. I watched my daughter in real time in the bright fluorescent light of a hospital lobby in Richmond see her marriage for what it was. It was like watching someone wake up. "Marilyn," she said, very evenly, "we drove up here. My mother and I are standing in the VCU lobby right now. They have no record of you ever being admitted." There was a silence on the line that lasted maybe 6 seconds. Then Marilyn started to talk fast. Different hospital, sister facility, mix-up at the front desk. Trevor's phone died. I watched Hannah listen, her jaw working, and then she very quietly said, "Marilyn, please don't ever call me again," and hung up. We sat in her car in the parking deck for a long time. She didn't start the engine. Finally, she said, "Mom, how long have you known?" I told her about Jared, about Russell at Belk, about the deed in Henrico County and the paid-off mortgage, about the wire transfer pattern and the kickback to Trevor's account. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She just nodded once, slowly, and said, okay, drive." I can't drive. We stayed at a Hampton Inn off I-85 that night. Hannah didn't sleep. I heard her in the bathroom at 3 in the morning, scrolling on her phone. By the time we drove back to Greensboro the next afternoon, she had logged into Trevor's email account. He had used her birthday as the password for 7 years, and forwarded herself 238 messages. I have read a lot of things in my life. I have read estate documents and divorce filings and the autopsy report on my own husband. I have never read anything like those emails. They were between Trevor and his father, going back to 2021. They were operational. "Mum needs to lay off a week. Hannah's getting suspicious about the thyroid thing. Try the basement flooding next. Tell her you need cash this time, not a check. The bank will flag a 4th wire this month. Good news, she got the raise. We can bump the asks." My son-in-law and his father had been running my daughter like a business. The worst one was from August. Trevor to Russell. "She's going to want kids soon. We need to think about what that does to the cash flow. Maybe 1 is fine, but we should discourage 2. Tell Mom to start mentioning hereditary stuff, so Hannah gets nervous." Hannah read me that one out loud at my kitchen table. Then she put her head down on the placemat and made a sound I will hear in my chest until I am dead. She moved into my guest room that night. She took 2 weeks of personal leave from the cardiology practice. We met with an attorney in Friendly Center on the Monday, Estelle's nephew, who did family law, and he walked us through what we had. He said it was, in his words, the cleanest evidence of marital fraud I have seen in 15 years of practice. He also said something that surprised me. He said the thing the family had been planning to do next, the part of the emails where Trevor had been gathering details about Hannah's nurse practitioner license and her employer's billing practices, hinting at filing some kind of whistleblower claim against the cardiology group if she ever asked for a divorce, was the part that could put real charges on the table. Not just civil. Criminal. Conspiracy. Extortion. Wire fraud. The Lindgrens were not amateurs. They were people who had figured out how to break a marriage open like an oyster and eat what was inside. I want to tell you what came next, not because I want to brag, because nothing about this is a brag, but because the comments under stories like this one always say, why didn't they go to the police? Why did the people who did this just get to walk away? I am telling you, we went to the police. We went further than the police. The attorney filed for legal separation that Friday. The same morning, he hand-delivered a packet to the Greensboro field office of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, and another to the Henrico County Commonwealth's attorney in Virginia, because that was where the wire transfers had been received. The bank, once Estelle's old contacts had a quiet word with the right vice president, voluntarily produced 3 years of statements under a subpoena that was waiting and ready by Monday afternoon. Jared was protected by whistleblower statute. The bank promoted him actually 6 months later, but that came later. The federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia returned indictments the following March. Russell Lindgren pled guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud and was sentenced to 27 months at a low-security federal facility in West Virginia, plus 3 years of supervised release and a restitution order of $164,000, which represented the full amount Hannah had wired North over the 3 years of the marriage. Marilyn Lindgren took a plea to a single count and got 18 months of probation and an order that she could not contact my daughter for the duration. Trevor was tried separately because his attorney refused the joint deal. He was convicted at trial of conspiracy and aggravated identity theft because he had used Hannah's personal information to open 2 credit cards in her name that she had never seen statements for. He was sentenced to 41 months. Hannah filed for divorce the day after the sentencing hearing. Trevor signed the papers from a holding cell. He did not contest a single thing. He did not even try to keep the wedding ring back. The civil suit which Estelle's nephew filed alongside the criminal cooperation recovered an additional $92,000 in pain and suffering and legal fees paid out of the equity in the Henrico County house, which was forced into sale as part of the restitution. Hannah used part of that to pay off her own house entirely. She used another part to fully fund the retirement account she had been quietly draining for 3 years to keep her husband's parents in Kashmir quarter zips. And she used the last piece, this was her idea, not mine, to set up a small fund at the Battleground Diner in Jared Pham's name. Any time a customer over 65 comes in alone, their coffee is free. Jared signed off on the wording. He cried when she showed him the laminated card the diner put up by the register. It is autumn again as I write this. October 12, almost exactly 1 year and a day from the morning Jared put his hand on my wrist. The crepe myrtles outside the bank are dropping their leaves the same way they did then. Hannah lives in the brick ranch in Hamilton Lakes again, by herself, with a rescue beagle named Pumpkin she got from the shelter on East Wendover. She is dating a hospital pharmacist named Wendell, slowly, carefully, the way you should. And the first time she brought him to my house for Sunday dinner, he sat through the entire story over chicken and rice without flinching, and at the end he said, "Mrs. Burton." Voss, I am so sorry that happened to your family. Not to Hannah. To my family. I noticed every word he said. I want to leave you with 3 things, because I do this now. I drive over to the senior center on Holden Road every other Tuesday, and I talk to women my age about how this works, how it starts, what to watch. I do it for free. I do it because I had to learn the hard way, and nobody else should. First, property records in every American county are public and online and free. If somebody in your family is sending money toward a mortgage, you have the right, and frankly the duty, to spend 10 minutes looking up the deed. You will not be sued for looking. The person who gets angry that you looked is the person you needed to look at. Second, Social Security survivors' benefits. If your child loses a parent before they turn 18, like my Hannah lost her daddy, there are benefits available, and a lot of widows my generation never knew to ask. I lost out on years of payments because nobody at the funeral home or the church or the hospital ever sat me down and told me, call your local Social Security office, ask, then ask again. Third, and this is the one I write in the front of every notebook I hand out at the senior center. Kindness without verification is not love. It's just a target on your back. The people who love you will never make you feel selfish for asking a question. The people who don't love you will make you feel selfish for breathing. Jared Pham sent me a Christmas card last year. It said on the inside just one line, "Thank you for listening, Mrs. Voss. My grandma would have liked you." I keep it on my refrigerator next to a picture of Hannah and Pumpkin and Wendell at the state fair, all 3 of them holding caramel apples, all 3 of them squinting in the sun. Some nights I sit at the kitchen table after the news goes off, and I look at that card and that picture, and I think about how close I came to letting it go one more time. About how a stranger half my age, working a teller window for $15 an hour, looked across the counter at an old woman cashing a pension check and decided to be brave. The world is full of people who will try to take from you. There are more of them than there used to be. But there are also people like Jared. There are people like Estelle who will pull up a property record at her kitchen table at 10 o'clock at night for an old friend. There are people like Hannah's attorney who will hand-deliver a folder to the FBI on a Friday morning because the truth deserves to be on someone's desk by Monday. There are diner owners who will laminate a coffee card for strangers. There are pharmacists named Wendell who say your family when they mean it. That is the part the people who hurt my daughter never understood. They thought we were small because we were quiet. They thought because we kept the peace, we wouldn't fight. They mistook the long patience of a mother for the silence of a sheep. I am the daughter of a tobacco farmer from Stokes County. I buried my husband at 22. I put a child through nursing school on bookkeeper's wages. I have been underestimated by better people than the Lingrens, and I will be underestimated again before I am laid down next to Bruce in the cemetery off Highway 158, but not by my daughter. Not any more, and not, I hope, by you. If you are watching tonight from somewhere in this country, and you have a feeling in your chest about somebody in your child's life that you have been pushing down for years, I want you to do one thing for me before you turn off this video. Get a notebook. Any notebook. $2 at the drugstore. Write today's date on the first page and write down what you saw, just what you saw, no conclusions yet, just the date and the thing. That's how it starts. That's how mine started. That's how it starts. That's how mine started. That's how a woman becomes harder to lie to. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Tell me your first name and the town. I read everyone. I am 69 years old and I am still learning every week how brave ordinary people can be when somebody finally gives them permission. Consider this your permission. Good night from Greensboro, North Carolina. Hug your daughter, look at the deed, and believe the cashier or the teller or the mechanic or the neighbor when they finally work up the nerve to whisper,